I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to A Dog's Life. Hey, Mr. Binks, you know I'm always worrying about things like grass seeds or bits of glass and the like when we're out and about. Well, that's why we're jumping on Zoom now to talk to the amazing vet nurse, Rachel Bean, about why it's important to have a first aid kit at home, but also to think about taking one out with you on your regular walks. Rachel Bean, what a pleasure it is to have you on A Dog's Life.
Thank you for asking me. Yeah, great.
Not at all. Now, you are a veterinary nurse, but you're a different veterinary nurse in so much as you believe in raw food feeding, and you also offer behaviour advice, as well as, of course, first aid advice, which is what we're going to talk about today as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I started my career, way back in 1994. I actually worked at the Dogs Trust. I was a Dogs Trust kennel assistant kennel manager for 2 years. So between 1994 and 96, I was with the Dogs Trust. Then it was a brand new kennel. So what happened was, as it become, full capacity, I was doing less with the dogs. It was more staffing issues and ordering and numbers and things like that. So I just applied within a 100-mile radius of the northeast, and that brought me down to the Manchester area to train as a veterinary nurse. So I've actually been in veterinary practice since 1996. It's just the last 10 or 12 years I've used my vet nurse degree to diversify, really, which has taken me into these other avenues, that we're going to talk about. Yeah.
Well, Rachel, my word, from 1996, gosh, you must have seen, the industry kind of really shift, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, definitely. The big corporates are taking over, and it's got good and bad sides, really. But I think the main problem we're having at the moment is recruitment. Veterinary practice is a short-staffed vets and veterinary nurses. It's been a bit of a crisis at the moment, actually. And I'm still in practice. I've never left practice. I just dropped my days to become a locum veterinary nurse. So that basically means you can pick and choose when and where you want to work. And that gave me the flexibility of doing traveling and doing my own projects. But yeah, I'm still in practice 2 days a week. So I work Mondays and Tuesdays and the occasional Fridays. But the small practice that I'm at the moment would have me full time again because, short staffed. And that's one of the biggest changes, I think, is recruitment issues.
Yeah, because it's a lot of it's down to Brexit, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And a lot of it's down to stress as well. We have a lot of people dropping out because of stress. And, as we know, the veterinary profession has got the highest suicide rate. And I've certainly lost 3 colleagues during COVID and probably about 7 colleagues during my whole career as a veterinary nurse. Yeah.
Gosh, yeah, that really is quite a sobering. It brings it home. I'm so sorry, to hear that, because, I always think, yes, being a vet must be really, really stressful. 1 minute you're welcoming an 8-week puppy into someone's life, and giving them their first booster jab. And then, you're euthanizing them, 15 years later, and you might have just finished that. You know what I mean? So you're going
it's
to
a roller coaster.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. But certainly vet nurses really play such a fundamental role. Over the years when I've had a panic about one of my dogs, you ring up the emergency practice, it is the vet nurse that you speak to. And I mean, I've praised, because you've got to keep your cool, because you're dealing with a hysterical person, i.e. me, and you need to calm the human down and get some sense out of them.
Yes, we're kind of the conduit, the link between the client and the vet, really. We're the communicator, and we're usually first on the scene, usually. Yeah.
But you're doing a lot to help people, which I love, with simple steps to offer the sort of first step when you're at home, something's happened. With your advice and your first aid tips, people can think, right, okay, I know what to do initially, get things under control, then ring the vets.
Yes, yeah. And I started teaching canine first aid probably about 17 or 18 years ago. And it started with the local RSPCA branch. They just wanted some staff training. And so I popped in and did a couple of hours. And then another local branch heard about it and said, oh, will you come and do our staff? And it kind of just snowballed from there, really, to a point now where I'm busy every weekend, literally teaching all over the UK. And what I try to bring is, and definitely in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a little bit of an influx of everybody's jumping on the bandwagon and teaching canine first aid, which is great, because the more owners know about canine first aid, the better. But what I want to do with veterinary professional tutors is take it to the next level and teach pet professionals. So we need really good, concrete and higher level canine first aid knowledge out there to the pet professionals, because at the moment, somebody looking after your dog for 2 weeks while you're on holiday legally doesn't necessarily have to have canine first aid knowledge. And that's what we're trying to change, trying to make it mandatory. That any pet professional has a canine first aid qualification, and raising the standard of the canine first aid training as well, because through the grapevine I do hear what people are teaching. I'm like, oh, why are they teaching that? That's wrong. So we're trying to standardize it and make sure it is really good quality knowledge that's been imparted as well. Yeah.
I love this. I absolutely love this. I mean, Sam Gaines often comes on the
Yes.
pod.
Yeah.
Because I must admit, I've never used a dog walker. I don't honestly see the point. The reason for getting a dog, I think it's a no-brainer, is that you walk it.
Yes.
And if you don't have a life that allows that, it really, you should get a cat. I spent years wanting a dog and couldn't have one. I mean, years. I didn't get my first dog till I was 37, as a grown-up living on my own, because there were no dog walking services before 2002.
Yes, and now to a penny everywhere.
Exactly. I see them every day, Rachel, and the whole first aid aspect of courses is absolutely essential. Okay, so I've done 2 first aid courses, not yours, I know, but I found them really, really, really interesting. I mean, I remember when Molly died at home, 2 a.m, one of the first aid courses came rushing back to me when the person doing it, I can't remember now, said sometimes it's difficult to know if your dog is dead.
Yes.
So take it from there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's obviously a little bit sort of grim, isn't it? But we definitely need to determine whether the dog is actually passed away or not. And there's a few signs that you can look for. Mainly, it's what we're looking for is mucous membrane colour. So mucous membrane is when you pull the eyelid down, that little pink area there, the fleshy bit, that's a mucous membrane. And also the gums. The gums can tell you an awful lot about what's going on with the dog. So if the dog is still circulating blood, then it's probably a good, nice, healthy pink colour. If the dog is deceased, it'll be either white or horrible grey colour or a blue colour. But the other thing you need to check as well is whether the heart is beating. So the heart, you need to put your fingers, your thumb and your 2 fingers around the sternum, which is just behind the elbow. That area there is where the heart is sitting in the dog's chest. And just put a bit of pressure through your thumb and 2 fingers, and you should be able to feel a heartbeat or not. And then the other thing to look at is the femoral artery. So the femoral artery is the big artery that's on the inside of either back leg, and it's kind of mid inside thigh, so it's just in between the 2 inside thigh muscles above the knee joint, if you like. Put a bit of pressure and then you should be able to feel a femoral artery or not. And then the other thing to check is the eyes, because the eyes will tell you whether the brain is active or not, because same with people really. When you cover the eye and then expose the eye to a light source, whether it be daylight or a torchlight, the pupil will constrict and dilate if the dog is alive, because if the brain is still alive, it's sending messages through the optic nerve backwards and forwards saying we need more light, we need less light. If the dog is deceased, then the pupil is described as fixed and dilated. So it goes like a big black big black circle, big black hole, and is there permanently. So there's a few signs, and obviously the breathing as well. You need to look at any nostril twitching that indicates a dog is attempting to breathe, and look at the chest and put your hand on the chest. Can you feel or see any chest movement? So those are the vital signs, really. Is the dog breathing? Is there any circulation, etc.
And that, of course, is useful, for example, a dog walker where a dog might slip its collar, bolt to a main road, and get hit by a car.
Yes, yeah.
And it's the difference from being unconscious, isn't it? To,
yes.
For example, so to have some knowledge on that. I know it's a bit of a heavy way to begin, but just thought we'd start with a bang. But, on a more sort of practical day-to-day level, my own current bull terrier Prudence, who I know you've met at that dog fest up in Cheshire, when must have been 2016, that actually.
Yes, I think it was. A while back.
Yes. Well, yesterday, honestly, they're like the princess and the pea, the bull terriers. So she must have grazed her foot on our second walk yesterday, because yesterday evening she starts the dramatic limping around the flat, So obviously I have a look at it and things, it's nothing serious, it's just grazed, okay, and it must have happened because it's dark and we've got debris everywhere, because we're in London on the pavements, and something's obviously just caught it. So what would you recommend if that happens, particularly if you're a dog walker and suddenly a dog in your care starts limping after a walk and you've got to return it to its owner?
I think what dog walkers have to do is inform the owner. What they cannot do, and this is because of the Veterinary Surgeons Act, which came out in 1966. They cannot give it a diagnosis, so they cannot say to the owner, "Oh, your dog has cut its foot, it will be okay to leave." What they should be advising is, "Oh, your dog cut your foot today, I advise a vet visit," because then they covered them. But also don't leave it as a verbal, because I've had situations, and these stories come up at my first aid courses. For example, one dog walker had taken a couple of dogs out that had a bit of a scrap. It was nothing, it was just handbags, but the Labrador had one puncture wound on his head. The dog walker took him home, cleaned it just with plain water, then phoned the owner and said, "Oh, he's got a puncture." She said, "Oh, I'll come and pick him up, I'm sure he'll be fine." And the dog walker said, "You need to pop him to the vets because dog bites can get infected." She says, "Oh, he'll be all right." And then 3 days later, it did infect, and the dog needed an anaesthetic. It needed opening up, cleaning, putting drains in. Suddenly then it was the dog walker's fault. The client completely turned around and said, "It's your fault. You never told me that I needed to go to the vets." And the dog walker said, I did, but it wasn't written down. It was just a verbal. So I always advise dog walkers and dog groomers, etc., to have a written form that says Max Smith was bitten by Toby Jones on at 3 o'clock, veterinary advice, being given to go and see the vet, and then the owner sign it, the dog walker sign it, give them a copy, and then keep a copy, because then the owner can't come back and say, "You never told me."
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, yes, it's so important. Yeah. Because I know bites, honestly. I mean, I've got a cat called Gremlin, and he's always been a bit of a scrapper. He's huge and so on, and Gremlin by name. And just before Christmas, anyway, he'd been in a punch up, but there was no visible sign. Like in the past, he's had giant abscesses explode up, and of course we go to the vet, and but there was nothing untoward about him, and it was only when I realised he was so hot. I thought, you've got a massive infection, however this has happened, so anyway, he's fine again now, but really something to think about, and also, of course, if a dog bites a human,
exactly.
But at home, for your regular dog owner, it's also important to be aware of first aid, really. I mean, not everyone uses dog walkers.
Yeah, definitely. And there's nothing stopping dog owners from going to a first aid course. And also I do an online one as well, which is just easy for owners that don't want to make a full day course. They can just do it in their own time at home. But it's just that basic knowledge, isn't it? Is spotting when the dog is unwell, when you just said, like, when the dog's got a fever, when it goes off its food, what could it be? The most commonest injury that we see is just out on a walk, cutting its foot on glass. But the amount of people that come in, owners come in with cut feet, and they've not been able to stop the bleeding. You know, they come in with tea towels wrapped around it or a carrier bag taped on, you know, and just some simple knowledge about tourniqueting or correct bandage techniques is potentially life-saving. Definitely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was lucky. Oh, one of my best friends was a vet nurse years ago, and through kind of Molly's life, really. And Molly was born with slightly deformed front feet, actually, that caused lots of hard skin to develop, which would crack easily, you know, and so on. So, yeah, Kerry taught me how to bandage a foot. I'm good, Rachel.
Just
but you know, once you know how to do these things,
exactly,
and stock up, of course, you know, with this thing called vet wrap. Because there was one time you couldn't buy vet wrap, and this is kind of before the internet was really big. I think it was before Amazon. It was, you know, talking about 2004. Basically, vets would make you go into the practice. Oh no, we can't sell you vet wrap. And I'm like, why not? Well, you know, because it self adheses, and you could do it too tight, and then that will stop the blood circulation to the dog's foot, and then you're going to have to amputate its paw. And I'm like, right. I'm thinking, you know, I smell a bit of a rat here, really. And because you take your dog in to get bandaged, you know, she comes out, you know, with this grand bandage on her foot, you know, that's cost over £100 just to get a foot bandaged. You know, when actually it is doable at home, isn't it, Rachel?
Yeah, some of the minor ones, definitely. Yeah, but then you know, we sometimes get the other end, you know, the other end of the story where, you know, people leave things way too long, and then come into the vets, you know, and then it's difficult to treat or difficult to repair or difficult to heal because people have left it. So you can get the other end of the scale as well, where owners just leave things.
Yes. I'm, you know, absolutely. I mean, it is. I mean, you know, I remember, gosh, we were on a photo shoot for the Express, me and Prudence. It was a last minute thing, and we had to get the shots. And Prue was being really stubborn about walking along. And anyway, she managed to rip one of her this is another common one, of course, is ripping toenails off. Dew claws obviously are often ripped off in a play, or they can get caught in brambles, you know, depending on your dog. And my word, toenails can bleed, can't they, Rachel?
Yes, they bleed.
But at that time, it was a bank holiday weekend. It happened. It was late on a Friday afternoon, and the vet didn't have an appointment for me till the Tuesday. So I had no choice then, you know, and this was before the pandemic, and luckily I was able to do it. But I took Prue in for a checkup on the Tuesday, and I was quite chuffed, actually. The vet did compliment me on my bandaging skills.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is knowing when it's life-threatening and when it isn't. You know, dew claw, you know, it may bleed a lot initially, but it's not life-threatening. You know, it can wait. You know, it could wait. So yeah, then that's the thing about educating owners, is what is classed, you know, triaging really is what is deemed and classed as an emergency, you know. That's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm really interested. I think I will do your online course, actually, because it's always good.
I'll send you the link, and then you can have a go. Yeah,
and certainly all our listeners, you know, I think it's a great idea, to be honest with you, because everyone does need things, you know, sort of a go-to in situations. But what would you do, you know, for example, if you were trimming your cockapoo's beard, for example, the groomers are fully booked, really, it's gone really brown, food's getting stuck in that beard, and it's pretty grim. And then accidentally the cockapoo will move its head, and yikes, the scissors have gone on the lip.
With that, again, it won't be life-threatening, but there'll be a lot of blood. You need to put pressure on it, so cold pressure is usually good. So wet a tea towel or something like that, and then just keep pressure on for sort of 5-8 minutes, and keep taking the pressure off and see if it stopped bleeding. I mean, if it continues to go like gush, as soon as you've taken the cold compress off, then, you know, it's a good indication that it probably maybe needs a stitching. Yeah, and that's actually a common injury with groomers, actually, because the dog moves or sometimes licks its lips. That's another common one. It'll stick its tongue out and then get its tongue scissored. Yeah, that's a common one. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Oh dear. Yes, yeah. So yeah, exactly. So would you use an ice cube maybe in that
You could
situation?
do, yeah, as long as it's covered, and don't put it on directly, because that can kill the tissue completely. But yeah, just wrap something cool or cold in a tea towel and put pressure on, yeah. Because that vasoconstricts, you see. So it reduces the blood flow to that area.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. No, it's really good tips. I hope people are writing this down. Now, the other big thing, which has, because I've had a bull terrier all my life, really, is choking. I had one
Oh,
incident,
yeah.
God, where Molly swallowed a whole knuckle end of a rawhide chew.
Yes.
This was 2005. Obviously, since then, I've never bought a rawhide chew ever since, and don't recommend them to anybody for lots of reasons, not least their choking potential. I was in the room, she wasn't unattended, and it
Mm,
just accidentally, because they go all mushy, slid down. Wasn't too bad at the Queen Mother Hospital. It's extraordinary how vet prices, I always have to say, have absolutely soared, not in line with inflation at all.
mm,
But that's for another podcast episode. Yes, it was one of the more cheaper vet bills, actually, in the end, to actually save her life. Yeah, that was dreadful. And of course, it always happens out of vet hours. That's the other
yes,
thing. If
it
there's going to be an
does.
accident, it's never in vet hours, and it's never
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
weekday.
yeah. Bank holiday Monday.
Yeah, exactly. So, luckily Kerry was around, and we did what we could, but it had got quite bad quite quickly. Anyway, long story, she lived, and that was fine. And the best vet in the world actually happened to do her surgery. He was a student at the time, Rob Goggs, who's
Oh,
gone.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I'm glad, Molly helped him have experience, if you like.
Yeah,
He was brilliant. He was brilliant with me as well. And that's
good.
also, yeah, honestly, can't say anything at all. I'm really brilliant. Oh God, I sent him champagne. I actually sent him thank you gifts. It was running into Christmas when it all happened. I sent him a hot water bottle with Molly's face on it.
That's great.
He's quite a scientist, you know what I mean? So he got this hot water bottle with Molly wearing sunglasses on the front. And he said, I've never seen anything quite like this before. He rang me to thank me. So funny. Anyway, it's all, but yeah. So what do you do if you think your dog has swallowed something, your back was turned for half a second
Mm.
and oops, something's, causing retching?
Yeah, and I think people are caught out because people don't realise actually how flexible the dog's esophagus is. With them being sort of predators, if you like, their esophagus is designed to flex and be flexible. So when they're not designed to chew food into small pieces like a horse, let's say, like a herbivore. They're designed to grab, rip, and swallow whole. If I've got Labradors, have you ever seen a Labrador eat? Or it's like everything has got to go down in one go. So this is why these objects, play things like balls and things like that slip down really easily because the esophagus is flexible. So a few things can happen. It can either slip down and just stop at the larynx area because there's a bit of a narrowing there, and that's when you generally get the ball choking incidents. And then the chew items, yeah, they kind of slip down and they're just too far down for you to reach with your fingers. And even if you could reach them, they're so slimy that you can't get a hold of them. So one of two ways. If it's a ball, then you have to try the Heimlich maneuver. Now, when we say abdominal thrust, we have to use actually the word abdominal thrust because Heimlich now has got a copyright on it. So you're not actually allowed to use that word. So we're going to call them abdominal thrusts from now on.
Right.
But it means the same thing. So if everybody's seen the film Mrs. Doubtfire, then they know that scene
Yes.
in the restaurant with the prawn. Yes, that's what you need to do is get behind your dog, around the waist, underneath the rib cage where the diaphragm is, and you put your both hands into like a fist formation, and like you would a person really, it's just hard thrusts in and up half a dozen times. If that fails and it's going to be stressful, you need to bundle the dog into the car and then off to the vets, because if the dog is choking but still getting a little bit of air around, the dog will be panicking so much that we will potentially just sedate the dog straight away. So somebody's job will be to jab the dog quickly, or if the dog is able to get an IV line in, and we knock the dog straight out, so then we can get the object out. There's actually a method going around on social media at the moment, a really good video of if the dog collapses and it's a ball stuck in the throat and the Heimlich maneuver has failed, you need to pop the dog on its back, and you can only do this one if the dog is unconscious, and you need to run your thumbs up the dog's throat until you feel the shape of the larynx, because that's where the ball is stuck, and then you push as hard as you can underneath the larynx, so you're pushing the ball out. And there's actually 3 really good videos on the internet at the moment showing you how to do that, but that's the only way you can get a ball out. Any of the other things like high chews and things, you might have to reach down with some long pliers and grip it and then pull it out. That's the only other way to do it.
So difficult though, because you'll be panicking. That's the problem.
Yes,
and of course the stress is contagious from you to the dog.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
you know, well, if anyone's like me, you know, be completely in meltdown. It was only when I finally pulled myself together, you know, with Molly, you know, I got her up to, you know, the QMH and everything, but you know, say it was okay. But you know, but that's why, yes, you know, again, knowledge about toys, really.
Yes, yeah, it's making sure that you're playing with appropriate toys with the dog, you know, balls with ropes on. I mean, we see an awful lot of dogs choking on tennis balls. You know, the amount of German Shepherds, Dobermans, the larger Labradors, the big Golden Retrievers playing with tennis balls, they are a choking hazard. There's, you know, if that ball is thrown and the dog catches it at the right velocity or the right angle, it will go down. So my Labrador, my smallest Labrador, is 24 kilos. She's quite diddy, so she's probably the smallest Labrador I would allow play a tennis ball. Anything bigger than that, you're going to have the good quality balls with ropes on, things like that is much safer. Yeah,
no, gosh, I really agree. I mean, I find the market for dogs balls is a bit disappointing, really. You know, actually, I mean, most of them has squeaks in, which for me, I'm sure you'll agree, it's not ideal. You know, we don't like squeaks, but then for terriers, squeaks kind of totally become the main thing. And if you're trying to do training and use play as a reward, they want the squeak rather than the game. And you are absolutely nowhere on the pecking list at the moment, because it's a squeak. It's way more interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, even there's, I won't obviously mention any brands, but you know, I use tennis balls with Prue, but she is okay. She's a miniature bull terrier.
Yeah, she's small.
She can't swallow a tennis ball. But you know, I wanted to get her off tennis balls at one point because I was really worried about chemicals in them, I'll be honest. But they work. Unfortunately, there is something about the smell of a tennis ball, which is obviously why the police and the army use them.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. I mean,
and it's the bounce. It's the bounce. There's something in it, you know.
Yeah.
That no other ball has got, apart from I call it, you know, a Wimbledon tennis ball. We use, well, I wouldn't say what brand. I'm not invested into the brand of tennis balls in any way, but they work. But anyway, but you know, I can't find a ball actually. You know, they're smaller on the whole, is what I'm trying to say. Than an average Slazenger tennis ball. There you go.
Yeah.
So that's rubbish.
Yeah, and I think the most commonest ball that we see is just a very heavy rubber ball. It's just marginally smaller than a tennis ball.
It's orange. I know the one.
And they're very smooth and heavy. So, you know, if somebody's throwing that and it's already wet from saliva or the grass, and a 38 kilo, you know, Golden Retriever leaps up to catch that, the velocity of that coming down is just going to go whop in the back of the throat.
Scary. It's scary. It's scary. It's making me, you know, that's why I could never have been a vet nurse or a vet. It's moments like this, you know, I just find it makes me go, whoa. And then, of course, just, you know, I suppose helping people understand that to play with a stick is probably your license to go to the vet.
Yes, you know, it might not happen in 5-10 years, but when it does happen, it can be catastrophic. Because when the dog lands on a broken stick, it can go.
It's happening again.
Yeah. Yeah. It can go into the chest cavity. The other one is, as they try and run into it and try and pick it up, it can go back into the back of the throat and then pierce all the soft tissue in the back of the throat. But the other dangerous one is if it pierces underneath the tongue, because the tongue has got a big artery underneath the tongue called the lingual artery, and they will bleed to death from that, because it's very difficult to stop.
Oh, and then there was a no, not Labrador. I'm thinking about your dogs, but it was on BBC London News only last week, actually. I'm trying to get them onto the radio show. I think they lived in Marlow. It's a Dalmatian. Lovely story, lovely man, it's Dalmatian. Walking along by the river, Dalmatian goes off scavenging, being a Dalmatian, and comes back to his owner with blood pouring out of his mouth. Oh, he'd eaten a fishing hook.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's common, and I think if they swallow it and then it goes down and gets stuck, and
that's what happened.
Yeah. So what tends to happen is you can get the fishing wire hanging out of the mouth, and then the big instruction is do not pull it. I think a pet owner might be tempted to pull that, but you're not to pull it. And often, I mean, I've seen a few of those where they have to be referred because you have to get a scope down there to deal with that. Yeah,
scope. That's how Rob Goggs got Molly's end of the rawhide chew out, actually.
Yeah.
And yes, this Dalmatian, they didn't mention how much the surgery was, but I can actually understand how much it would be. So because poor old Prue had to have an emergency pyothorax oh god, at the start of the second lockdown. So I know, she's still here, so I mean that's testament, I think, to how robust these dogs are. I mean, dogs are tough, aren't they? Really,
they are. Yeah.
I mean, whilst we're panicking and everything in these situations, the funny thing is the dog isn't.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's like, what's all the fuss about?
Yeah, it's like, just get me to the vet. Gosh, Rachel, fire away on anything else you'd like our listeners to kind of key sound bites, Rachel, just to come to the close of this episode. And you must come back.
Yeah, sure, I will. Yeah, I think canine first aid training is accessible for everybody, dog owners. I think maybe people do think that they have to go to a class or spend lots of money on a class. Not the case. I mean, parents go to first aid pediatric, baby first aid classes, and it's just the same. You're looking out for your pet at the end of the day, and if the trip to the vets is going to be easy for the animal, and you've taken some life-saving steps, then the more likely the dog's going to survive. So yeah, get some education. It's not hard. It's not hard at all.
And information is power, isn't it, Rachel?
Yeah. I was told by fairly recently, actually, and just to sort of make that concrete from I do train some of the mountain rescue people, and they said the reason you panic, or reason that people panic, is lack of knowledge. If you've got the knowledge, you're less likely to panic.
No, it's interesting. Now, I'm very jealous, actually, because I believe that tomorrow you're jumping on a plane and flying to India.
I am, yes. I was doing, we seem to have this timeline, don't we, before COVID and after COVID. But before COVID, I was doing quite a lot of volunteer work in Asia, so mainly Thailand. And then I started in India as well. So I was going sort of 3 or 4 times a year for 2-3 weeks at a time, working in the shelters. So from a behaviour point of view, it's fascinating watching and having to deal with the street dogs. From a behaviour point of view, you see how dogs communicate, but also from a handling point of view as to how to handle these dogs and make sure you don't get bitten. But also seeing from a veterinary side as well is just all the things that we see in that country but not in the UK. So it just adds depth and experience really to my first aid training. But it's giving back. That's the main thing. I mean, I'm going on Monday, Friday, and on Monday I'm teaching at because the big cities in Asia, especially Malaysia and India, there's actually a booming pet trade. So I'm actually teaching at the big academy for dog grooming. So it's the Professional Groomers Association of India, and they've got a big academy in Mumbai. So I'm actually teaching first aid there, and then via somebody else, as there's a big dog rehab place in Mumbai for street dogs as well. So I'm going to spend a few days there, helping with the neutering clinics as well. So
Gosh,
yeah.
I know how amazing. Well, when I've been to India 3 times, I always say this on my podcast. My producer's going, "Oh God, don't go into India again." But no, I absolutely love it. I would love to
Yeah.
live there, actually, to be
Yeah.
honest. But in the south, in Kerala, I loved Cochin.
Yes.
Actually, it
Yes.
was my
Yes.
favorite. But I did spend a bit of time in Mumbai, actually,
Mm.
and it did strike me. I remember we went. I don't know what area it was for a meal one evening, and there were all these really well looked after pedigree dogs
Yeah.
walking around, and I was
Yeah.
like, wow, because obviously I missed Molly terribly every time I went. And then you go from there to sort of some unknown resort on the east side of India, which is less touristy and everything. And that's where I really, really watched so many street dogs.
Yeah.
And it was my first sort of encounter, and it was really interesting from a behavior point of view. And it kind of
definitely.
debunked quite a lot of what we're taught, actually, because
Yes.
they're quite
Yes.
solitary, actually. They do actually like to hang out on their own.
Yeah, and they do have definite boundaries as well, so territorial boundaries, like
But that's all for another episode. But I think you have worked with Mike Dower.
Yes. I went out there again before COVID, so it must be 5 or 6 years ago, with John Rogerson, who unfortunately, very sadly, passed away last week. I was supposed to meet him in Mumbai to spend some time with him.
I was going to do his India training course once. Yeah. And I just couldn't leave Molly. That's why I didn't. I just didn't, because it was 3 weeks. And but it was something I really. Gosh, I still haven't got hold of Sue Evans, actually, who I'm sure you know as well.
Yes, I do know Sue.
Oh yeah. My mentor, actually, to find out what happened.
Yeah, we don't know, actually. It's still all I know that he collapsed at the airport on landing. So yeah. Very, very sad, because I've known him right from Dogs Trust days, because he was our behaviourist in 1994. So I've known him that length of time. And how we got involved with Mike was at the rescue near Bangkok. He was doing a training course. John, they said, "You're coming on this training course. We'll have you do a day's first aid as part of the course." I said, yeah, sure. So yeah, we had a great time. So even though so they don't really take volunteers at Mike's, I'm welcome anytime. So to help with nutrient clinics. So I think we're going for 3 weeks to Thailand this year, mainly holiday, because my other half is coming with us too. But I'm gonna pop and see Mike. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. No, I know I'd love to go out there as well, actually.
Yeah.
But for me, I have terrible anxiety about leaving my animals in the care of anyone, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It really isn't, I know I missed the chance to do that India training with John. I mean, he really, his advice is so absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's really basic and straightforward and non-complicated.
Exactly, because training a dog isn't complicated. Some people, I think, really make it out to be this huge scientific
elite.
And you've got to learn all the science and so on and so forth, when someone just really wants to sort out some basic things with their dogs, and you can explain it really simply. But of course, John was the master of reverse psychology.
Yes.
Love that.
Love that. Yeah, he was great.
Oh, well, look, it's such a sad note to talk about, but nonetheless, hopefully a tribute, really.
Yes, definitely a tribute,
to the Dog Vinci Code, which is the book that he's famous for, that really everyone should Google and buy, to be honest with you.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think I've got 2 or 3 copies of it.
Have you? Yes. Yeah. Oh, Rachel, look, thank you for this. Listen, have a brilliant time in Mumbai.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah, because I know there is the Indian Kennel Club. They do have a kennel club. It's brilliant, really. And, cruelty and neglect out there, it's not done, as I saw some terrible things, but, it's not done on purpose. It's done through poverty. I mean, India is an eye-opening visit for anyone, on so many different levels. So it's not the same as here with cruelty and neglect, you know. So, you know, dogs are hit by cars and so on and so forth, but it's just done out of the need for survival. And it is such, there were 5 C's I described India. God, obviously one started with cows, another was colourful, another was chaos. And I can't remember, I spent ages thinking about the 5 alliterations to describe. Cacophony was another one, because you get to India, get off the plane, you're absolutely knackered, and then that's it, you're hit by this crazy, it's all going off everywhere, and it's really hot, and you're just thinking, whoa, I thought London was crazy. But listen, I really hope you have an amazing time. And
thank you.
All the links are going to be in the show notes, Rachel, for people to subscribe to your online course.
Yeah, I'll send the link. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you for asking me.
That's our show, Mr. Binks. What did you think? Yes, I know. Well, we are lucky to have Vet Wrap always in the house. And you're right, it's time for Woof of the Week. A dog can cut its paw so easily on a walk, either on a sharp stone or on a piece of glass. So be prepared. Take a little first aid kit with you on your walks, and also have one at home. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts. Thanks again, of course, to Rachel Bean for joining us today. And all the links are, yes, you've got it, in the show notes. And thanks again to Mike Hansen, my producer, for all the music and production as ever. Find out more about him at Pod People UK. And I'm at Anna Webb Dogs. What's that, Mr. Binks? Yes, you're right. You can subscribe for free, and we will be back in your feed next Sunday. So subscribe now and you'll never miss another show. Also, if you fancy checking out some special goodies recorded for a Dogs Life Club members, visit our Patreon link, which is also in the show notes. Bye for now.
Pod People.